I have spent my life searching for the answers that my father and my father's fathers failed to find. Who were the precursors? Why did they create the vast monoliths that litter our planet? How did they harness eco, the life energy of the world? What was their purpose? And why did they vanish? I have asked the plants, but they do not remember. The plants have asked the rocks, but the rocks do not recall. Even the rocks do not recall.
The first three Jak and Daxter games have, until very recently, been left to languish. It's a trilogy that did well enough at the time of release, with Sony's advertising campaign positioning the two titular heroes at near mascot status, right at the end of an era when logic still dictated that you needed a famous character platformer to shift units of hardware. Jak and Daxter were a last hurrah, along with Ratchet and Clank, to try to build the kind of franchise that, in actuality, wasn't really needed anymore as the business moved into the current trend of first and third person shooters. The PlayStation 2 wouldn't receive the Halo killer it wanted, Uncharted was some way off in the distance, and in the end, it wouldn't need either of them. The machine dominated the hearts and minds of the game-playing public as the Dreamcast died, the GameCube floundered, and the original Xbox struggled to secure the content it needed to stay competitive. It was a period of massive change for the video games industry's focus on content creation, and more change was to come. Yet Jak and Daxter, a remnant of a rapidly fading past, would prove crucial to the continued success of Naughty Dog as an internationally renowned developer, and for the development of AAA video games as a whole. But where are my manners? My name's Peter Willington. This is episode 2 of our special series here at InRetroSpectPodcast.com, and I'm here to tell you that without Jak and Daxter, Naughty Dog as a studio could not possibly have hoped to have evolved into the master storyteller that it is today. Because in my opinion, being a group of storytellers is exactly what the team at Naughty Dog has always aimed to be, consistently constrained by the limits of technology in the early years, but in the PS2 era, finding a new level of freedom that it would exploit in that generation, paving the way for the studio's best work, the Uncharted series. Jak and Daxter would prove to be the franchise they experimented with, a safe bet that they knew would shift units with the backing of a mascotless Sony, a franchise that could tick along nicely while they continue to evolve their craft. To best understand this change, you need to see the Jak and Daxter games as transitions from the old into the new, an awkward middle phase that couldn't deliver the immersive worlds they wanted to portray, but could show glimpses of it in rudimentary ways. Let's take the big feature the first game touted as our first example, a seamless open world with no loading screens after the game had begun. I remember playing the game when it was released and I was absolutely blown away by this technical spectacle. Where Crash Bandicoot had remained fairly faithful to the level-based structure of old, the original Jak and Daxter took the open play of Super Mario 64's small-ish game areas and blew them wide open so that everything connected. If you could see a point of the island in the distance, you could get to it, and that was a truly epic achievement. However, the reason this is important is not simply that it can be done, and that gamers don't like to be kept waiting when they're playing. No, instead, it yields access to a new form of storytelling, one where actions aren't confined to levels like scenes, but instead form a smooth flowing narrative that constantly follows the player character. Uncharted might jet set between locations, but the most memorable moments are those that flow from passive dialogue to direct interaction, and the beautiful moments, like the collapsing hotel, that sit precariously between the two. Jak and Daxter, when mixed with a little Tomb Raider perhaps, provides the missing link between the Crash series and Uncharted. Crash is a pure platformer, granting players progress for perfecting the timings of jumps, and Uncharted is an action game with environment navigation. Jak and Daxter as a series is a platformer, certainly, and while it gives the illusion of being open, there's never really more than one way to complete a section. J&D requires you to navigate the environment with standard platforming mechanics, but it's also surprisingly heavy-handed when it comes to combat. The first game in the series is mostly hand-to-hand, with some eco-powers thrown in for good measure. But Jak 2 and 3, they prioritise combat sophistication over platforming complexity. There are arenas to fight in, dark powers to control, and loads of guns. At times, Jak 2 and 3 encroach upon Ratchet and Clank territory, and are, I feel, all the worse for it. The Jak games also include additional elements of play, such as the fishing minigame from the original, the floating vehicle driving from 2, and the surprisingly satisfying desert dune buggy racing in 3. J&D is a platforming series at its heart then, but it's one that morphs the genre far further into the realms of action. The tone of Jak and Daxter is also a halfway point for Naughty Dog, so much so that Jak 2 represents a very awkward transition for the studio in its tone. Crash is a zany platformer that anyone can love. Uncharted is an unrealistic, but still grounded adventure with moments of genuine human drama. The Last of Us is deeply personal moments exploring the fragility of life, contained within a tense action game. But Jak and Daxter, well, it's a stepping stone. The first game is a cheery romp around a bright world, much like the Crash Bandicoot series. But Game 2 turns on the new metal, ups the angst, gives Jak a goatee, and opens with torture in the name of science. The backlash from fans of the original at the time, much like that seen in Ubisoft's second 3D Prince of Persia title, was focused on a character that brought down the proceedings. Certainly though, Jak 2 is a less happy place than the original island's idyllic setting, and it's trying to tell a slightly more mature story. With Jak 3, that darkness is toned back, becoming much more the mystery-filled adventure that Uncharted would be for the PlayStation 3. Perhaps the smaller details are the most exciting to pore over though. The little moments that would become signatures of Naughty Dog's later work can be seen in rough form throughout Jak and Daxter. The heavy focus on collectibles that are scattered around areas and hidden in hard-to-find places, that's all here, and it's all inspired by Banjo-Kazooie. The father figure or hero that you simply aren't sure that you can trust. Jak 2 and 3 have got you covered way before the Uncharted trilogy tried any of that. The slowly collapsing tower toppling spectacularly in the distance. Jak 3's intro has one, and it looks totally convincing too. The hardware squeezing push for more detail, lusher environments, and better animation. Yep. and yet. It's these little things that the Uncharted series has become known for, but actually, it's the previous series where a lot of the trials of this type of presentation or content are to be found. And I suppose the issue I'm sort of dancing around here is that, in actuality, I don't much like the Jak and Daxter trilogy as a whole. I think the first game is great, and it's one of the few games I've replayed multiple times to completion. But Jak 2 is a gigantic misstep for me with its hollow tension, and while Jak 3 brought back a lot of the quality, I don't think the series ever fully recovered. But you know what? It doesn't really matter. They were good enough at the time to keep getting the next game greenlit, and they paved the way for Uncharted. However, it's been fascinating to return to them with a more critical eye, and with the hindsight of what the company would go on to do, and I strongly suggest that anyone with an interest in the development of the platformer, or Naughty Dog as a studio, goes and checks them out in their original form, or in their HD versions on PlayStation 3 or PS Vita. Thanks for listening to episode 2 of our special series exploring the work of Naughty Dog. If you missed episode 1, make sure to visit InRetroSpectPodcast.com to go back and listen for free. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher Smart Radio, and if you're subscribed to us on either of those services, do please give us a review and rating. As always, you can follow the label on @InRetroSpect and like us on Facebook. And if you're really in a generous mood, tell a friend about the podcast. We really do appreciate all of your continued support.
In the next episode of Naughty Dog in Retrospect. Dan straps himself in for a ride alongside Nathan Drake as he discusses why Uncharted is the coming of age of Naughty Dog. That's coming up on next week's Naughty Dog in Retrospect.